Thank you, John, and good evening, everyone. And it also gives me great pleasure to welcome each of you to tonight's conversation, Leadership, Philanthropy, and the Liberal Arts. This event highlights DePauw's progress on one of the pillars of our Bold and Gold 2027 strategic plan, academic renewal, particularly the introduction of our new School of Business and Leadership and the community impact that we envision our new school will have. This evening, we will hear from two standouts in the world of business and leadership. 1968 DePauw graduate and advisory trustee Steve Sanger, the former chairman and CEO of General Mills, one of the world's largest food companies, we all eat cereal, and Jeff Ubben, founder and managing partner of Inclusive Capital Partners, a San Francisco-based investment firm. Their conversation will be moderated by John Fort, class of '98, a member of DePauw's Board of Trustees and a nationally renowned broadcast journalism with CNBC. Having received his MBA from the University of Michigan in 1970, from 1970 to 1973, Steve Sanger held marketing and sales positions with Procter & Gamble before joining General Mills in 1974, where he progressed through a variety of positions in marketing management across the company's consumer food businesses. He served as chairman and CEO from 1995 to 2007 and continued as chair of the board through May 2008. Steve and his wife Karen have given generously to the university in support of the Sanger Leadership Initiative to facilitate, as Dean Clark said, our commitment to developing leaders that the world needs. In retirement, among Steve's passions are the Minnesota Vikings. And in fact, in a small world story, Steve recently invited Tony and me to attend a game as his guest. And we discovered that the folks sitting behind Steve's seats at the stadium were also DePauw alumni. There are Tigers everywhere. With strong family ties within our community, Jeff Ubben holds a BA from Duke University and an MBA from the Kellogg School of Management at Northwestern University. We'll forgive him for going to Duke as an undergrad. His firm, Inclusive Capital Partners, is an organization with a passion for combining capital and governance in pursuit of a healthy planet and health of its inhabitants. In addition to his many corporate directorships and public-private company board memberships, Jeff serves on the boards of Duke University, the E.O. Wilson Biodiversity Foundation, the World Wildlife Fund, and the Redford Center, and formerly served as the chair of the national board of the Posse Foundation. Jeff's company is based in my hometown of San Francisco, California. And John Fort is a former editor-in-chief of the DePauw, and I know we have at least one reporter from the DePauw who is writing a story this evening. And he was also a media fellow while he was at DePauw. He creates, produces, and writes CNBC programming, such as Working Lunch and On the Other Hand. John also developed a multi-part online course called The Black Experience in America to help prepare his young sons for life in America following the murder of George Floyd. Before the launch of his broadcast career at CNBC, John worked reporting positions in the Silicon Valley to explain the phenomena of Apple and Adobe at the San Jose Mercury News. At Business 2.0 magazine, he told readers what works. And as a senior fellow at Fortune magazine, he explained many trends that escaped the rest of us, or at least the rest of us back in the day, like cloud computing. This evening, we look forward to hearing more about their unique perspectives on leadership, philanthropy, and the liberal arts. Please join me in welcoming our speakers to the DePauw University stage.
Thank you, Dr. White. And I really also just said that to make sure the mics were on. Let's, Steve, good to have you here. Can you talk into that thing, make sure it's on?
Is this on?
It is.
All right.
Jeff, yours too.
On?
Yeah. All right. Well, we passed the first hurdle. Great to be back at DePauw, as always. And I want to start off topical. And yesterday was kind of a crazy day, certainly in the markets, but also in D.C., with the Speaker of the House getting booted out for the first time in American history. And meanwhile, the markets are sort of going nuts. And I wonder, Jeff, you were a big player in financial markets. Does this sort of instability in the federal government matter to bond yields, to stocks, to sort of the mechanics of the markets?
Yes. I don't think about this much, but we have an ultra-polarized society where 4 or 5 congressmen can do this, which I guess in the old days, stalemates were perceived to be good, but this is not stalemate. This is total inability to act. And it's happening at the same time that the risk of this kind of very comfortable bipolar world that was dominated by the American dollar and American exceptionalism is changing. With China emerging and creating essentially their own fiefdom with the gangsters, Saudi Arabia and Russia. So the risks are quite high in a dysfunctional legislature and dysfunctional society is treacherous.
Okay, so we'll get back to some of the current stuff too, but now I want to go broader, Steve, and what do you think, your experience at General Mills and on other boards and just in leadership has been vast. What do you think is the most pressing challenge for the U.S. economy over the next 20 years?
Well, there's a lot of things that you could identify that are a pressing challenge, from climate change to artificial intelligence. I mean, how to deal with all this various things that are occurring. But I have to say, I think the biggest thing, and it's the thing that's critical to addressing all these other things, is the need to reestablish some level of trust in our leaders. And I'm not talking just political leaders. We've never really trusted our political leaders, but that's not quite fair. But the level of trust is exceptionally low. But if you look at other parts of our society, I'm talking about business for sure. Business leaders are questioned. Scientific leaders, we're seeing inability to replicate studies because the original data has been manipulated. And so all these things are undermining our faith in our leaders. And what happened yesterday is just another example of things that most of us as citizens don't agree with and don't think should happen, but they are. And I think reestablishing trust in our leaders is a big challenge, but it would help a lot to do that if we're going to address the other things, which are things like climate change and things like artificial intelligence. And this is where I think DePauw's history of producing leaders, and we can talk more about that to the extent that you'd like, but I think that's why I feel like we are important in this process, and we need to teach our students to be the kind of leaders that earn trust.
Speaking of leaders, thank you to the group over here. I see you've got signs. I can barely see them, but I hope you stick around to the end, come by and have a conversation with us, because often the challenge is getting students passionate enough about what's going on to come out to these things. So you're here. I love that. Only thing I love more than a good protest is a good news story about a protest to explain to the community what the issues are. So I hope we get that too. And we have an activist with us here on stage, Jeff. Often we think of people with money as being people who want things to stay the same. But before I ask you about the challenge, a big challenge of the next 20 years, because I think this fits in, you're on the board of ExxonMobil, but not because you love fossil fuels. You're actually there as an activist. How does that work?
This goes back to, I spent 20 years almost profit maximizing. I started to feel like something wasn't right. You would have boardrooms where you wouldn't even consider, frankly, the health of the workforce or the health of the customer, certainly the health of the planet. It didn't come up. I had a son that was in environmental studies. I have a wife who's a conservationist. And like a lot of CEOs, when they're home eating dinner, the dinner conversation started to change. And I started to listen. And, I realized that that perhaps capitalism was not the force for good. I mean, Adam Smith himself said that, the invisible hand will solve all problems, but you had to incorporate the externalities of the product price, of the cost into the product price. And the externalities of fossil fuels are CO2 emissions. And we don't do that. We haven't done that for any business, whether it's, the processed food that creates unhealthy outcomes for our society. I can keep going. So the question is, could I be an activist in the boardroom and move my voice from the shareholder only to these other constituents that haven't really had a voice? And I've been on 20 company boards, and I guarantee you that until 3 or 4 years ago, they did not have a voice. So that's, and then my thought process is,
But literally, it was a dinner table that sort of brought this.
Also, I didn't like the other activists. I didn't like the neighborhood I was in. These New York hedge fund guys. So that was part of it too.
Okay. All right. I did mean to cut you off, but for you not to keep going.
Yeah.
I just wanted to, kind of underscore that, because it's a.
My wife says she's got.
I
this
agree
great-
with Jeff about the hedge fund guys, by the way.
Yeah. She's got this great expression, called think twice. If you're a 20-year-old kid and you get a free $250 offer to do an online gambling thing, think twice. If you're searching Amazon and you get something that, where they try to sell you something you don't really need, think twice. If you're going to retweet something, think twice. If you're going to eat your second steak meal of the week, think twice. And if you're going to cancel a person or a company or an industry, think twice. Because when you think about the problem that we have in energy and food, these are massive capital problems. Tremendous amounts of capital have to come to solve these. And we're not going to app our way through this thing, right? We're not. So there's this kind of valley of death between prototype and commercialization. And the venture capital guys won't do this. They don't have the money. The private equity guys won't do this because they don't have the time horizon. But Exxon will, because Exxon has the equity risk capital and the knowledge to do it. They're in the business, right? So I have my best friend from college, his son went to work for a hydrogen company. He graduated MBA and undergrad from an obnoxious Ivy League school. And the company's run out of money, but he cares so much. He stuck it out to the end, and then I introduced him to Exxon because he's talented to begin with, but now he has this knowledge base. It's the perfect match to put that talent base and that inspiration into Exxon, and they welcome him with open arms because they know they have to be part of the solution. So what I haven't figured out, John, is if this is going to drive stock market value. I actually don't see sustainability premiums being generated in the stock market because they don't like capital. The stock market is too short term. They do not like capital.
They like meme stocks.
Yeah, it's just a casino. It's like a video game.
For a rich guy, you sound very cynical.
I am. The five most important words in capitalism is, but does it scale?
Right.
It's the religion of efficiency. It's one big optimization model. And you start to shift the focus from one of observation to one of control. to harness nature, to engineer the world as you want. You know, if you cannot measure it, you cannot manage it, and it's the winning side of free market liberalism, and that is the problem.
So Steve, wow, I got louder. Steve, how do you lead through these types of problems? Every generation has them in a different form. You led General Mills during a period where the personal computer was first becoming a thing powerfully in the office, and the internet as well. There were challenges then about globalization and, you know, what should we do? So how did you do it?
Well, I think the leadership challenges that when I think of the ones I faced, there are the kind of fundamental challenges that any leader of an organization faces. How do you align your activities and strategies with the mission? In our case, how do we provide food that is that people want, food that people want at a price that they'll pay, that they think is reasonable? And so that involves a whole set of things of figuring out how good it tastes and how healthy it is and how you balance those things and how you do it more efficiently. And you talk about the coming of the computer, that really contributed to the efficiency of food processing. I mean, that enabled us and other food companies to meet those demands more efficiently all the time, and either keep prices affordable or expand margins. We did a little bit of each. But so those kind are the kind of things you spend your whole career kind of developing the capabilities for, and you know how to do it. And so if you know what you're doing, those challenges are not that hard. I think the ones that are much tougher are the ones that come in unexpected, the crisis challenge. And you know, like if you'd asked in 2019, what challenge is the United States going to face economically over the next 5 years, no one would have said a pandemic, I don't think. And yet that's probably the biggest economic impact that has affected all of our businesses over the last couple of years. In my case, there was one of a product our oat supply and our wheat supply were managed by outside contractors. They would put a small amount of insecticide in to keep the bugs out. This was not, General Mills didn't operate this, but we bought the stuff from those guys. And somebody put the wrong one in. The one that was supposed to go in the wheat supply went in the oat supply. No health risk whatsoever, no problem, just misapplied. And you know, that comes over over your email on Friday afternoon. You think, well, that's something we can handle pretty easily. A month of full-time effort later, we had to bury hundreds of thousands of pounds of perfectly good cereal because there was no way to navigate both the government regulations and the various agencies involved and the potential that the public would not be comfortable with it. So, you know, it's just the kind of thing that you're not, no matter how prepared you want to be, you're not. I was the chairman of the Wells Fargo. I wasn't chairman of the Wells Fargo board, but I was a lead director when their account scandal cropped up. And there again, this was something that was not a problem one day and became a very nearly existential problem for them within a couple days.
Sure.
And so these are the times when your leadership skills are really tested, and because you're flying blind, and so one of the things that I hope that DePaul will do, we do it at Michigan in the Sanger Leadership Center there, is these crisis challenge tabletop exercises to give the students some experience with things like this in a tabletop kind of manner. They're really quite good. We even have people impersonate you interviewing them, and
Very handsome people, I hope.
They're tough questioners, I'll tell you. But those are the ones that I think, as I recall, my time, those are the biggest challenges that I learned the most from, quite honestly, but also were the toughest.
So, Jeff, I'm going to ask you a version of the question that Steve addressed about the challenge of the next 20 years for the economy, but I think you're probably going to entwine it with a challenge for the planet, which, I think some people coming into this room might not have assumed you would do that.
From a finance perspective, for those folks that are going to go deep into the finance portion of the DePauw undergrad business school, the big returns are made if you invest well into constraints. When you have abundance, it's not typically going to generate high returns.
Invest well into constraints.
Let me keep going, yeah. So
Okay.
up until about a year ago, you had 10 or 12 years of free money. Anybody could get a loan to do anything, to buy your stock back, to buy your competitor. And what it creates is asset value inflation, which by definition is lowering the return on that money as it's deployed. What was in abundance, we thought, in the 80s, when capital was expensive, when interest rates were 15, 17%, what was in abundance, we thought, was nature and workforce health and customer health, because we took it for granted. It was free. And it was free for many years after that. All of a sudden, the planet's pushing back. We have, a scarcity of water. We have a scarcity of manufacturing talent in this country. And this is where the big returns are going to be made if you can invest well to anticipate, alleviate, beat your competitors at handling these new risks. And money's gotten more expensive than it was just a couple of years ago, but that's an interesting dynamic. So the combination of now financial constraint, nature constraints, and workforce constraints is going to give us a really tough 20 years, in my opinion. A really tough 20 years. Really tough 20 years. This is the opposite of what we saw when I got into the business between 1986 and 2006. It was golden. And we had China to ship all of our manufacturing and cheap labor to maximize profits. So everything's changed. Now, we don't have China anymore, and we have all these constraints.
So part of this, it would seem from your description, everybody should be concerned about this, but that's not how the market is working. Some people would like to ignore all of that stuff, say it isn't happening, et cetera, et cetera. So, Steve, if I'm standing holding a sign on the side of the auditorium right now, because I'm passionate about change at DePauw, right? It's not even about a crisis happening. This is just day to day. There are things that I would like to see go differently, to be designed differently. Why should I engage with the School of Business and Leadership, maybe particularly the leadership portion, to figure out how to make that change happen?
Well, that's a good question. I think I've often said, leadership really isn't an academic subject. You can learn about leadership by studying leaders and studying leadership principles, but you learn to lead by leading. And there's no substitute for that. You learn to lead by making mistakes. We were talking about this
this
building.
side too. Sorry.
And
I didn't even look over here.
yeah, they're on both sides of it.
Awesome.
But when I was here, it was Bowman Gym, and we brought the Temptations and the Four Tops and the Smokey Robinson and the Miracles to DePauw, and that was great. And people said, "Boy, you did something great there." And I said, "Yeah, I won't talk about the crappy groups that I brought the year before that, where I learned that if you bring somebody that nobody wants to see, nobody will come. And so why don't we get people that somebody does want to see and charge more for it?" And that worked. But you know, you learn all these things by, a lot of things by trial and error. And I think the pause magic is there's so many leadership opportunities on this campus. There's a group here that thinks some things need to change. There are other groups here probably that are much more comfortable with the way things are, but that doesn't really matter. There's leadership opportunities all across that spectrum, and you learn by doing it. And if the School of Business and Leadership can help facilitate that, and just help our students build those skills, it doesn't have to be business. I hope this school will serve our science students, our journalism students, our media students, all of our political science students, with material that will help them develop their leadership skills and activities, co-curricular activities that will help them learn to lead better.
Jeff, how has the liberal arts idea affected you in business and as an investor? When we were backstage a little while, there were at least 2 books you talked to me about having to do with AI that I should read. I don't think you majored in science, right? But you're learning across multiple different subjects and arenas. Why is that important?
Oh man, learning curves are everything. That's a great thing about what we do is I get paid to learn. Climate was a learning curve for me, but you could tell intuitively that it's the ultimate interdisciplinary problem. It's humanities, it's economics, it's political science, it's nature, it's science, it's everything.
Philosophy.
Yeah, I mean so it's this existential threat, but it's also the most awesome opportunity to be part of something bigger than you. I mean, Ed Wilson, who is my friend, and he said, "This is our higher purpose." You know, hopefully we're not fighting world wars anymore. I worry about that. That's changed since he passed away a couple of years ago. But this is our higher purpose. You know, to planetary health, and it's not for the planet. The planet's going to be fine when we're gone. You know, the fish will repopulate in a year. It's us. We're the ones. We're the rodents that are going to all die. You know, we're that population machine testing the boundaries and the limits of the planet with us on it. As soon as we're gone, it'll be fine.
Well, that's cheery. But for those who think that maybe,
I hate
at
to be.
least
I'm
for a
not
while-
apocalyptic, by the way. I don't mean to be. Yeah, I don't. I think that's a problem with climate activism, that they defaulted to these big data models, global treaties, you know, and they made it bigger than individual action.
Right.
And so, you know, the urge to solve has kind of risen in tandem with the inability to directly influence it. That's a problem.
Right. You're not saying human extinction is going to happen soon. Just if it did, the planet would be fine, and the fish would be absolutely fine.
You're making me feel better about being in the class of '68, you know, when my runway isn't all that long anyway.
Steve, for you, you were a history major, right?
Yes.
How
Don't
did,
ask me any test questions, though.
like I know the test questions. I was an English major, but no, I do. We read.
Yeah.
But how did your DePauw experience influence the way you have led? You also went to Michigan for business school. Give me a sense of the most valuable experiences that shaped your perspective and how that fits into why you're still engaged at DePauw.
Yeah, you're asking a question that the dean of the Michigan Ross School asked me just after I'd been promoted to CEO at General Mills. We were walking through the school, and he was trying to raise money, and he said, what was the most important thing you learned at Michigan that contributed to your success at General Mills? And I said, you know, to be honest, my undergraduate education contributed more. And he asked why, and I talked about DePauw's leadership opportunities and the stuff I'd done here. And, you know, none of them were earth-shattering. I mean, booking bands, being an officer in a fraternity. But all
I think we need to get you back to booking bands today because Smokey that's like getting Taylor Swift here.
He's still
so-
around.
That's a big
Yeah, I
deal.
know, but come
Actually,
on,
I saw the
that's-
Temptations and the Four Tops. They're probably not going to survive the next apocalypse either. But
See this
so
man
anyway,
after class, people. He's gonna- yeah.
we got into a long discussion about that. A year or so later, I went back there, and they said, "We've got this idea. We want to put this crisis challenge. We want to put these tabletop exercises together. We want to do a leadership module, not academic, but extracurricular." And I made the really dumb decision to say, "Gee, what would it cost to scale that up?" And that therein became the Sanger Leadership
So
Center
glad
at the
you
University of
asked.
Michigan.
Yes.
But describing DePauw, I mean, the liberal arts classes, I think, just made you think and made you broader and gave you interests that you carry with you the rest of your life. I took a drama class in my junior year, and have subsequently been the chairman of the board of the Guthrie Theater in Minneapolis, and drama wasn't on my radar screen, but this class motivated me and captured my attention. And there were, and I read a lot of history, just for pleasure, and I can't really tell you the specific things that come out of that make you a better leader. I mean, we've all read probably Team of Rivals and say, gee, Lincoln was led in ways that we never would have thought of. But I think the combination of the critical thinking in the liberal arts and the leadership opportunities at DePauw is really special. And I don't know exactly how that mix contributed to my success, but I know it did.
It's a critical mix here at DePauw because we've got music as a very important part of what DePauw is, and we've got the economic realities where we're trying to preserve and navigate. And speaking of creativity, Jeff, you have a sizable stake in United Talent Agency, which has a number of creatives as clients, and you're a patron of the arts. Why?
My interest in UTA stemmed from this need for content that was clear to me going to be tremendous as we made streaming what was additive at the time, but now it's kind of the only model. It's going to change. The Netflix didn't really innovate around anything but the delivery of the content. They actually were high-cost producers of content. So that's a big problem, and that's all going to kind of come back to earth, if maybe even go the other way. But content's gotten really interesting with AI.
Let me pause.
Super interesting with AI.
What do you mean about go the other way? Because you might be able to help Disney out here. They're trying to figure this out.
Yeah, I mean, everything about digital economy kind of sucks, really, when you think about it. Like, we thought we could get our ticket online through a digital Ticketron, but it turns out the chatbots beat us to it, and now we got to pay $10,000 for Taylor Swift. That's ridiculous. We thought, we...
Come to the Vikings-Kansas City Chiefs game this Sunday. You might see her.
Yeah, exactly. Speaking of the online search algorithm and Taylor Swift, right? So the idea was the internet was going to surface a lot of lesser-known ideas and product. But in reality, what it's done is it's made the better-known, given the better-known products and people more attention.
Thus the summer of Beyonce and Taylor Swift.
Right.
Yeah.
And so we're getting these perverse outcomes from this digital economy. We could do a bank run in a day, right? That's not cool. That's not good. Yeah. So the whole idea of slowing things down, thinking twice, is the opposite of where we're going. And it may, like I said earlier, be exactly what we need, but it is an unmovable force. This is just what happens. These tech guys, they ask for forgiveness, not permission, and they just go. And AI is going to rob It's fake to begin with, and it's going to rob us of creativity.
What do you mean it's fake?
It's all input. It's borrowed input.
Right.
It's borrowed input, no matter what you say. And so as it gets built over the years on borrowed input, you're going to have less and less of the regenerative force from the outside the system beauty of content creators. You're going to have less of that. So Simon Rich came to talk to UTA last week. He was a writer. He was the 7th writer hired at 25 years old at SNL. And then he went on to do 2 Pixar movies. He's 37 years old. He wrote a book called I Am AI. His buddy, I guess, is at OpenAI, Dan somebody. So he's kind of right there watching what's really happening behind the scenes, which is DaVinci version 3.0 is way smarter than what we're getting here at ChatGPT, because it's just ChatGPT's dumbed down. They want to show it to us slowly.
Okay.
And they're going to launch the DaVinci 5.0 in January 2025. That's the Armageddon right there. That's the apocalypse.
But you're not apocalyptic about climate, but maybe
I am
AI.
on this one. I am on this one.
Okay.
And it's not because it's going to kill us or anything like that. But what Simon says is that he would never be hired as the 7th writer in SNL. That's going to be outsourced to AI. So the existing showrunners, Shiana Rhimes or whatever, they're going to be great for the next 10 years because they're going to be super productive. But where's the content going to be after that? So you have this. So to me, AI is we keep moving to shorter and shorter term time horizons. The stock market, when I got involved, the holding period was 7 years, then it was 5 years, and then commissions became free, which is again speed, efficiency, fast as possible.
Talking about Robinhood here. And
Yeah, and so
tracking the meme stock movement.
once trading is free, the computers take over. They just do. It's data sets. It's computers, trying to read something ahead of the next computer. They have put me out of business, and their time horizon for the average stock is 3 months. 7 years to 3 months in my lifetime. Is that a discounting mechanism, or is it just a voting machine, a voting system? So we have the digital economy is fraught with risk. We just don't see it. And to celebrate AI, it's going to hollow out the creative industry, but it's going to be super productive for the next few years. And that's what we're celebrating, the super productivity of this thing that's robbing us of our creativity over the next 3 years. And we love it.
Some parts of it, at least. It's fun when it does the math problem, I guess.
That'd be great. First-party data for drug discovery and stuff like that, that's good. It's good. But we already had that. That's machine learning. It's been around.
So, Steve, how can a School of Business and Leadership at DePauw, perhaps uniquely, tackle some of these challenges? And I would say part of the backdrop here, what I love about DePauw is that you generally either engage here or hate it. Like there's no happily disappearing in Greencastle, right? You're miserable if you're disappearing. So in that kind of environment, how can a School of Business and Leadership form leaders that this new, challenging, AI-driven, environmentally challenged world needs?
I don't know. The kind of challenges that Jeff is describing, I don't know that any of us at DePauw have ever dealt with. And so I think I come back to our best hope is if we can develop leaders who earn our trust and will tell us the truth, which is kind of in short supply these days. And we'll listen to two sides of an argument, and we'll, Jeff's example on Exxon I think fascinates me because it makes all the sense in the world to me. In order to address these big, costly challenges like carbon capture, you need a huge capital base, but that's not the way the climate activists think about this challenge. But if we were talking to each other and you trusted that the people you're talking to weren't just giving you one side of the story, that were giving you we're maybe giving one side, but listening to your side too. Maybe we could, I think that's critical to get beyond some of these things. And I think to the extent that DePauw can teach and help our students develop the skills to do that, that's our best hope of attacking these things.
Yeah, when you think about a machine-learned society, over time, the underlying assumptions behind the algorithm will fade into obscurity. And certain basic questions will no longer be asked. That scares the crap out of me. And when you are sitting here in a classroom, and this is happening to us, we're basically going digital for everything, we have to get the students to ask these questions that stop being asked. Because otherwise we're on autopilot, and it's correlation, not causation, and we no longer have knowledge, really.
This also, I guess, goes to the importance of free expression. You talked about exploring multiple sides. You talked about trust. It's hard to trust if you don't feel like you're going to be heard, or even if you don't know what all the positions are, like those who want to speak are going to be heard, right?
Yeah.
I'm wanting to hear you. What do you? Where does free expression fit into the role of business?
The echo chamber is just terrible.
I think free expression is important, but we have to learn, if you're expressing ideas, to do it in a way that is respectful of the people you're expressing it to. So, I mean, if somebody says, well, I have the right to free expression, so I'm going to paint a swastika somewhere or something, you go, no, you don't have that right, I don't think. You can argue a subject with someone constructively as long as you're respectful of their viewpoint, and even if you don't agree with it. But we've gotten to a point where you don't want anybody who disagrees with you to even express a viewpoint. I think that's dangerous.
When intention, in my view, becomes more important than civility, becomes more important than resolution. And I guess the House of Representatives is grappling with this right now across many different factions. Jeff, when you think about where you're dedicating your philanthropic dollars, separate from your investment dollars expecting a return, how do you decide?
I mean, it's changing. It's changing with some of this. I mean, this is maybe just old man stuff, you know. Like, it's changing. The system level thinking that that so many philanthropists want to use makes an abstraction of place and people, in my opinion. I'm finding that I want to go into purpose where my direct actions create effect. I would say Posse, frankly, was a great example of that. I really followed the leadership of Debbie Beal, but she never wanted to be in advocacy, you know, for free speech. She built the program as a merit-based program to stand the test of time with regards to affirmative action. People wanted her to be in an advocacy cause and really, you know, champion, you know, racial diversity on campus specifically, but she said, no, I'm just going to reflect the pool from which I draw, which are the best students at public schools. And they're going to get out of merit scholarships, and that is a very subtle way to change the system from the ground up, one person at a time, you know? So she stayed small. So increasingly, I find this need to go local. Again, you know, here I am on the WWF board, and you know, it does feel like everything is kind of abstracted, and I'm too far away from the problems. I just learn a lot on that board, you know, because I'm still learning about all this stuff. So that's how I see philanthropy And I would say, my dad and my mom were great examples of people that, boy, they put roots down. The tech guys that came to San Francisco did not do that. They were focused on changing the world, changing the system, being wise guys, whatever it is. My parents put roots down, and the
Tell me about that.
community flourishes.
For a moment, because when I was here at DePauw, I was just thinking 30 years ago, almost to the day, was the first time I set foot on DePauw's campus as a prospective during Fall Rush, which is not the best time to come as a prospective. I know Fall Rush doesn't exist anymore, but it's very lonely. And then there was an Ubben lecture series that was powerful in the memory of all of the students that I went to DePauw with and still keep in touch with. When you're a young person at the dinner table, right, with them, your version of the experience that you had, what were you learning, experiencing about their direct impact here, and why?
Well, first off, anybody that knows my dad, can you imagine being his son? Can you imagine that? I mean, there's a humbleness to him, and he saw both sides so well. He was conservative and would stick his foot in his mouth, which is kind of hard on the shirt sleeve sort of behavior. But boy, did he listen. He listened, and he would move, and he would learn. It didn't come out right away. It was subtle. He's stubborn, but that was.
Your mom and dad are treasures, and they're for DePauw, and they're great philanthropists, and you're kind of second generation, I guess, maybe more, I don't know. But I didn't really grow up in a family that did much philanthropy, so we kind of started giving money to United Way and stuff, because we thought, well, they know what they're doing, and I don't know what they're doing, but they're addressing problems, and all that's good. But I think something you said I would agree with, which is that if you can add something to an effort beyond just the money, it really can make a difference. General Mills, toward the end of my time there, was dealing with the question of hunger in Africa, and we dealt with hunger all over the place. But hunger in Africa was kind of unique because you had people growing crops, but they couldn't get them turned into anything that would feed large numbers of people. The joke was, if you're a farmer without a market, you're a gardener. And what this nonprofit that General Mills and a couple of other companies in Minneapolis and elsewhere set up was a way of supporting food processors in East Africa, not just with money, but making our engineering staff, because now you can do stuff from anywhere. You can do a product line design for Minneapolis for a company in Kenya, and the thing that struck me is how much this energized our engineers. They loved contributing their expertise to people who really benefited from it. And so we gave them money, but the thing that was really energizing about it was the help, giving them the help. And that's turned into a very successful venture. And to the extent that I can find things like that either I or somebody I know can really provide value beyond the money, that is kind of what we try to look for.
Well, I think that's a great way to close. Steve, thank you for your giving of treasure and time and talent to DePauw as we open this business school. Jeff, your mom, Sharon, is here. We thank your family, your dad, Tim, who's passed on, you for continuing their legacy. And we don't know all the answers to how to solve these problems, but we know that continual learning and listening is going to be a big part of it. Thank you.
Thank you. I was, and I'd like to invite our students up to the stage so we can see your signs. So if you would like to come up here so that we can see your signs. This is part of DePauw's tradition, activism, leadership. So I'd like our students to be able to show their signs. Great, thank you. Excellent. Excellent. Awesome. Great. Yes. Great. Excellent. Thank you. Awesome. Awesome.
If you would
Great.
like to know more about why we're holding signs, you have some really nice information for y'all on Eagle Eye.
Great. Awesome. Thank you. Great. Awesome. Yes. Great. Well, thanks everyone for being here. This concludes the formal part of our program. I would like to thank our guests. I would like to thank all of you who joined us this evening, and thank you for our students for using their voices about the things that are most passionate. Thank you so much for being here.